month we are focused on a different issue that allows us to learn, explore collaboratively issues to advance sustainability in our community. It's a salon-style meeting, so please enjoy yourselves. Be kind to our bartenders, even if you're not going to drink an alcoholic beverage, at least, buy a pop or something. And thanks to Tony Tropy back there, who allows us to meet. I also want to just acknowledge that there are a group of us who plan these meetings. It's all volunteer-driven, and I'd like for the folks on the planning team to please raise your hands so we can acknowledge you. The other thing I want to mention, just a housekeeping. By the way, I'm Sue Lacey. I'm sorry, I didn't introduce myself. I'm on the planning team, and I am with Round River Consulting here in Akron. Find a chair, pull a chair into this room, even from the bar area. There's some chairs over here. Maybe before we start with our first speaker, you might want to find a place to sit if that's comfortable. So this evening we are focused on reuse strategies for vacant property. And actually last month we began this conversation to a significant degree talking about historic preservation and reuse of properties. And tonight we thought that it would be very timely to talk about land banking. And the reason it's timely is because within the last 2 months, is it Patrick, you've been hired as the executive director for County's new land bank. So we're excited to hear from you in terms of how we can utilize this really valuable tool to create green space and to redevelop property. So we'll be looking forward to sort of a nuts and bolts kind of presentation from Patrick this evening. Before we do that, we've invited Jim Rakakis from Cuyahoga County to join us from the Thriving Communities Institute. I've known Jim, I guess, for 25 years or so.
Since we both had jet black hair.
Since we both had Jim was city councilman in Cleveland, and I was an aide for Jay Westbrook, one of his colleagues, and through the years had opportunity to work together. So I'm personally thrilled to have Jim here in my own community. Jim served on council for 19 years and then was elected as county treasurer, where he served for 14 years. And actually 10 of those years was very focused on what quickly was emerging as the foreclosure crisis. And so I asked Jim tonight, how did you get so interested in this area? And as county treasurer, he began to see this whole crisis unfold, and some leaders in the community approached him, and even as county treasurer was very involved with trying to figure out what was actually going on and what were some strategies to address it. So within the Western Reserve Conservancy, the Thriving Communities Institute thrives, right? And so we've asked Jim to really help us understand why are land banks such a valuable tool, particularly to advance sustainability principles, and what are some really great success stories that you can share with us, and what's at the root of why those communities have been so successful. And honestly, we'd like for you to challenge us a little bit this evening too. Now that we have this opportunity, what do you think is absolutely essential to ensure that we use this opportunity as fully as we can? So thanks so much for coming down, Jim. And actually, Jim is going to be on a plane to be in Greece within 36 hours. Do you need to do something with your...
Trying to get my daughter's passport, which is supposed to be somewhere in the UPS tracking system, but it hasn't arrived yet.
Is there something, I mean, you need to do something at this moment?
Besides chastise my daughter for being irresponsible.
Okay. I just heard this about 2 minutes ago. Are we okay? Okay. All right.
Now, my daughter has the luxury of being in Tampa. She does research at the University of Southern Florida. About 2 weeks ago, she says, "Dad, could you check the boxes? I know my passport is there somewhere." So 2 days later, I actually hired 2 people to go through the boxes. And I don't want to say what I spent to hire people to do it. I said, "They're not here." And she says, "Dad, I know they're there." And I had lost it at that point. And we worked through a congressional office and hurry up and get the application in. And supposedly it was mailed out of the congressional office yesterday, and I'm waiting for it. And I got a UPS tracking number. Last time I saw it was in Newcastle, PA. And I told her, "I'm leaving Friday morning, dear, and if you're not with me, that's a real tragedy. And oh, by the way, you owe me for the ticket." Anyway, so, yeah, I'm a first-generation Greek-American. I was the first kid in the family born here. My parents immigrated here from the island of Crete in 1954, and they're long gone. But there are 150 of us from all over the world descending on the island of Crete in a town called Hania, which is in the second largest city in Crete on Saturday. So we're real excited. Anyway. So I served 19 years in City Council. I understand there are 2 members of City Council here in Akron. I salute you. City Council is important work. Rich and the council. Sue asked me how long I had served, and my answer was always too long. And then went to the county treasury. I was elected in 1996. Interestingly enough, I entered on a scandal and I left on the scandal. Neither with my scandals, but I was elected county treasurer because the county treasurer lost a little bit of money, about $114 million, and I was elected in 96. And minding my business one day in the summer of 2000, when 2 Cleveland City councilmen walked in and said, "Have you been following this foreclosure stuff?" And the answer honestly was, "What foreclosure stuff?" Jay Westbrook, Mike Polensik, and actually Ray Bianco, now a housing court judge, and they said there's flipping taking place on a proportion which we've never seen, and there are people buying houses without jobs, and these mortgages are going bad, and it's really ugly. And we were fortunate we had 2 national experts in Cleveland, both professors at Marshall Law School, Patty McCoy and Kathleen Engel, and I began to learn what the term securitization meant. My mortgage had been sold twice in the previous 3 years, but I didn't know why. I just kept writing the check and wasn't paying attention. And that's when I learned about securitization and mortgage fraud. And that's when, in December of 2000, we approached the Federal Reserve Bank of Cleveland and said there's something going on with mortgages, not through local banks, but through non-depository national banks like AmeriQuest, some other really bad players. You got to help us. And the Fed did what they do well. They had a big conference in March of 2001 entitled Predatory Lending in Ohio. We had 300 people, national experts. I thought, this is it. We're going to go to Alan Greenspan. Again, that was a very naive, quaint kind of notion. We did go to Alan Greenspan. The Fed said, "Thanks, we got the information. We'll move it along." And I don't have to tell you what was going on in Ohio. Ohio led the country in foreclosures for 6 years, 2000 to 2006. 3 cities in Ohio were hardest hit: Toledo, Dayton, and Cleveland, hardest hit of all. We worked in 2001 with city councils in those 3 communities to pass anti-predatory lending laws, and they were passed in late 2001, and the Ohio legislature, which had done nothing to that point, jumped right on it. And what they did was they passed a bill preempting the right of Cleveland, Toledo, and Dayton to intervene in lending activities. And as I was telling Sue earlier, at that point, there was no sheriff in town. The feds weren't going to help. The state wasn't going to help. We couldn't help ourselves. And in the old days of the Wild Wild West, when there was no sheriff in town, everybody robbed the banks. This had a curious twist. There was no sheriff in town. Now the banks were robbing everybody else. And let me give you quick numbers. Cleveland, in an average year, would have about 3,000 private mortgage foreclosures. Not about 500,000 parcels of property. Cuyahoga County, 3,000 private mortgage foreclosures. We went to the Fed. The number was at 7,000 in 2000. It doubled. By the time we peaked in Cuyahoga County in 2006, we were at about 14,000 private mortgage foreclosures. There are a total of 120,000 properties foreclosed in Cuyahoga County since then. Many have been foreclosed 2 or 3 times. So we got together repeatedly. We went to the feds. We said, "Look, criminal activity, can you help?" We had it all laid out, and I was telling you earlier, we just got no love from the feds. They said they're too busy battling domestic terrorism. So we looked around, and I hate to use the war metaphor, but if it was a war, it was clear that by 2006, 2007, we had lost the war. And we began to look with a group called VAPAT, headed by a guy named Frank Ford, on what you do with thousands and thousands and thousands of newly vacated properties. Quick statistic, the only city that lost more population than Cleveland between 2000 and 2010 was Detroit, percentage-wise. We've lost 18% of our population. So we heard about a guy named Dan Kildee, a fellow county treasurer up in Genesee County, which is Flint, Michigan. If any of you have ever seen the movie Roger and Me, that's Flint. Talk about a one-company town that had about 80,000 General Motors jobs in 1978. They're down to about 4,000 or 5,000 now. Devastated. Kildee started something called the County Land Bank, which was a powerful, nonprofit, yet based in government, but outside of government, nonprofit corporation, quasi-public, with extraordinary powers to take tax-delinquent properties, raise money, hold them, and keep them outside of this phony commerce that was occurring around the country. Because it was bad enough that properties had been foreclosed, then the feds were involved in reselling these properties through HUD and Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. So we struck upon the idea of creating a county land bank in Ohio. We worked on the writing of it for most of 2007 with folks at the Cleveland State School of Urban Studies and local lawyers. I'm a lawyer too. We introduced it in January of 2008 through some Republican sponsors, because Democrats weren't really controlling much now and they weren't controlling much then. And by December we had it passed. Unfortunately, it was a Cuyahoga County only land bank because nobody trusted land banks yet. So passed in December of 2008. We opened up our doors in 2009. We had such great success with the land bank there that by April of 2010, House Bill 313 was passed, which allowed any county over 60,000 to have a land bank. At that point, I was getting ready to leave. There was some minor issues up in Cuyahoga County. About half of the county government was going to prison. And as I often say at the opening, I said, not only did I not go to prison, I wasn't even under investigation. It was a mess. And I was leaving at the end of 2010. Rich Cochran came to me, who was the director of the Western Reserve Land Conservancy. And they did Halley's Run, the park here, and Adams Run and Halley's Run. And they've been involved primarily in preserving and conserving farms and natural and wild areas throughout northeast Ohio. Pennsylvania bordered to the islands down to about Amish country. And Rich said to me, and I've known Rich, he said, I want to be involved. I want a seat at the urban table. And I was skeptical at first, and I said, based on what I know about you guys, you're really good at preserving land in places like Geauga and Ashtabula and Trumbull and beautiful areas of the Summit. And he said, no, he said, we have a great team, about 35 employees. We bring our skill set to the cities. I want you to help me start land banks in northeast Ohio. And then we want to see at the urban table, we want to bring our folks into the city. So I started in March of 11, and then the interesting thing happened. People in parts of the state controlled by some pretty right-wing Republicans started calling me saying, hey, we'd like a land bank here. And even though my initial charge was to only work in northeast Ohio, northeast Ohio, there's Ohio. We started to move back to Cincinnati, Butler County, the home of John Boehner. We're in Montgomery County. And so besides northeast Ohio, we've organized land banks in every county with the exception of Geauga and Medina. We've now organized in southwest Ohio, where we had real tough opposition. So we're in Cincinnati, Hamilton, Butler County, which is Hamilton and Middletown. We're in Dayton, we're in Columbus, we're in Mansfield, we're in Toledo, and we're now all the way down the Ohio River to Belmont County. And as part of this work, so you're going around meeting with mayors and people saying why you need a land bank, including people in Summit County, where we had real resistance early on. I can tell a story about a powerful person in the county government. I said, hey, we got a grant, we're going to come in and help set up a land bank. And they called me and said, who do you think you are? We don't want a land bank. I said, no problem, we'll call the foundation and give them the money back. And then wait, on second thought. So what happened was, it was the mayor of Youngstown who said to me, not the one who's just been indicted, but the one before him, who said to me, you got money for demolition? And I said, well, we can through something called DTAC. And he said, he cut me off. He said, look, if you can't give me money to tear down vacant houses in Youngstown, so as far as I'm concerned, land bank is like a new car with no gas. It's great to look at, but it doesn't take me anywhere. So we, at that point, realized that besides setting up land banks, we really had to focus in on eliminating blight in the urban areas. And I have to tell you for the record, as cities go in Ohio, and I've been now in all the urban areas, Akron is in much better shape. You got to know that. I love Akron, by the way. I think Akron's a neat town. And I'm not saying that because I'm here. I'll say that Canton tonight. Akron is a neat town, and you're very progressive. The reality is you kind of stayed ahead of some of the demolition issues here, but it's awful in some cities. I mean, just awful. Dayton is as bad as any city in Ohio. Mansfield, anybody been to Mansfield these days? Mansfield was awful. Lima, I'm going to go around the state. depressed communities, post-industrial towns. So we said we got to raise money. And then we had some good fortune. Maybe you make your own good fortune. We knew there was a huge settlement coming out of D.C., something called the robo-signing settlement. Remember, we learned that banks that couldn't do mortgages right couldn't do foreclosures right either. And it was a $25 billion settlement. Every state got an amount of money. I'm not making a political speech here, but we went to Mike DeWine, and to his credit, only AG in the country, we went to him and said, you got to give us money for demolition. We had 100,000 vacant properties in Ohio. And Kasich was pushing and to give that $93 million and put it back in the general fund. Most states did that. And we said, and he took a tour of some urban areas with us, committed 75 of the $93 million he received through the settlement for demolition. In all fairness, the lawsuit began under Rich Corbury. But he then hired us and we set up a matching program, and that 75 actually leveraged another $47 million. And I should know this by heart, Patrick, how much Summit County got, including the match.
3.8.
How much?
3.8.
3.8 million. It was a total of 23 million for the county. Every county got one. He used the peanut butter approach. Everybody got something. I would rather he had stayed in just urban areas. But there was that amount of money. And then the second trip we made was to the Treasury Department. Treasury now backstops 9 out of 10 mortgages in this country. With the collapse of Fannie and Freddie, Treasury is the mortgage market. We went to Treasury. At the same time, we saw Mike DeWine and said, you got to give us money for demolition. Since you are the mortgage market, what you have to understand is that if you don't give us money for demo, there are people who will walk away from these bad mortgages, and instead of giving me $20,000 to take down 2 houses on that block, you're going to see a mortgage go bad that will cost you $100,000. Treasury was interested. It was kind of fortuitous. I saw him on a Monday, and on Sunday night, there was a program on 60 Minutes that featured our organization, what we were doing in terms of vacant properties. And I don't know, the guys at Treasury must have thought I had mojo or juju or karma or whatever. And we immediately began discussions. 9 months later, they basically said, at a huge meeting, and said, prove to us your contention that if you increase demolitions, foreclosures would go that way. So with the help of the land bank here, as you know, actually 13 land banks and another 3 organizations, we raised $140,000, and we proved that where you engage in demolition, you will bring down foreclosures. Because people, who used to take, who would see 40% of the mortgages in Cuyahoga County underwater, and people just taking their keys and throwing to the banker and saying, I'm out of here, including a member of my own family, by the way, who was in a city neighborhood really underwater. So Treasury, the study began, and January 13, the White House called, I hate to drop names, but they really did, Office of Economic Policy, and said, where's your study? Well, we had just begun the study, but we fed them the data. We worked with Case Western, Neo-Can-Do, Arizona, and Michigan, where our researchers were from. And by June, the White House was convinced, and they freed up something called hardest hit money, and they committed $60 million here in Ohio with demolition. And again, your share here was getting about $2 million. So there's another round, and I think there'll be more money made available later. Cuyahoga County got 10.3. I think Stark County is getting 5. So we're in the demolition business as well, and we continue to be. And I'm going to tell you, if I can leave you with 3 or 4 recommendations, is you should press your county council. I know you have city council members here. Where's Rich Swirsky? Rich is back there. You have city council members here, I know. And you should do what they did in Cuyahoga County. We did a study in Cuyahoga County that proved to the county council that you might live in Brecksville, you might live in Solon, you might live in Chagrin Falls, or Rocky River, or Bay Village, and think that vacant properties in the city are not your problem. They are your problem. And what we're able to show through the study is the collapse of value in the city and the inner ring suburbs that included Euclid, Maple Heights, Garfield Heights, Warrensville Heights, East Cleveland, and Newburgh Heights. The collapse of value there forced property taxes up for everybody in the county, because there are 4 countywide mills, and levies. I don't know how many you have in Summit. We have Tri-C, we have Metro Parks, we have Health and Human Services, and the Port Authority. Well, if you have to raise money countywide and there's no value left in the city or some of the burbs, by the way, those communities had lost more than 60% of their value since 2007, then you've got to go out and get it from the rest of the folks. So 1 mill in Cuyahoga County used to raise $30 million. Well, guess what? 1 mill now raises under 25. So what used to be a 1 mill request is now a request for 1.2. The study was called Vacancy Everybody Pays, and it showed that in Cuyahoga County, $47 million has shifted from city, inner ring suburbs residents to suburbs. And that was the argument made to the county council, and they've agreed to do a $50 million bond for demolition. and it's going to go through the county government. So one of the things, and I've talked about it when I was at East End Akron Neighborhood House, I'll talk about you in a minute, Chris, is that you should press your county council. I talked about it when I was at the county council. They own the problem too. They may live in more stable neighborhoods in the city, but they have to take ownership of the problem in the more depressed neighborhoods of the city. So go ask your county council to do a $10 million bond. I did a quick check with my friend in public finance. You have the bonding authority, you're pretty stable, you can afford $10 million. You might want more, but start with 10. And then as far as land bank goes, I know Patrick, you got a lot of challenges, just got started. Cuyahoga County Land Bank, and it's not just me that says that, I believe it's the best county land bank in the country. They've been involved in thousands of demolitions. They've been involved, well, they don't get credit for it, in rehabbing over 900 properties in Cuyahoga County. And by the way, if you like a property, and I did this the other day, and the Akron officials were quick to say, wait, don't leave. I'm not asking you to leave, but if you go to the Cuyahoga County website for their land bank, you will see properties streaming on the right-hand side. They'll give you a property. I mean, you might buy some of the more stable areas. They'll give it to you. You'll get a deed. As soon as you rehab it, you can produce a certificate of occupancy. And that program has produced over 900 rehabs. So when you're up and running, and that's got to be soon, Patrick, you should be willing to take properties in, even those that don't need to be demolished, some that are in better shape. You got to put them up on your website and get it up and running. Tell Akronites and people in Summit County, if you want to live in the city, if you want a property, we have it for you. All you have to do is rehab it, try to locate sources of rehab dollars. So that's one thing I'd recommend your land bank do. The second thing I'd recommend you do quickly, Cuyahoga County's been doing it for a while. In fact, they did it when I chaired the board, is we went to HUD, went to Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and said, stop the dumping of properties. What they would do is they'd bring all these mortgages in, and they would sell them in blocks of 500 or 1,000 at a time to investors all over the country. And they'd pay an average of $500 per property. They would cherry pick. They'd say, good one, good one, good one, bad one, bad one, bad one, bad one. And you'd see signs pop up on lawns in Cleveland. Maybe here too. You can own this house for $500 down and $500 a month. But the average investor didn't know is, A, they only paid $500 for it. All they needed is somebody to buy it and make one payment, and they were already doubling their money. We did a study before I left office that showed that over 90% of those never paid property taxes again. So one of the first visits we made was to Fannie, Freddie Mac, HUD, had to get to our congressional folks, and we share one now because these districts are elongated, and tell them stop. And I can tell you who to contact there. There's about 100 properties a month that go to the county land bank. Probably more than they would like. By the way, the county land bank in Cuyahoga County, an average of 2 people a day call and offer them the keys and the deed. They can't sell it. They give up, and they say, please take it, and they're starting to turn properties away. But try to get a pipeline established. You can do it not only with Fannie, Freddie, and HUD, but you'll get it with banks. You'll get it with Chase and Bank of America, Wells Fargo. What they typically do is they'll look at a property. If it's only worth $25,000 or $30,000, they don't want it. They just don't want the hassle. They just as soon give it to you. And if it's worth nothing, make sure when they give it to you, they give you money for demolition. So I would aggressively pursue bringing properties in once you're up and running. And I would work closely with your city council members and with community development corporations. There is a pipeline. Every CDC in the county, every suburban government has a direct pipeline to the land bank when they have a property. I haven't told you much about land, and I'll talk to you. I'll be quick, because you got the presentation. So here, what does the land bank do? Property's tax delinquent, right? And it's vacant. The land bank can foreclose on that very quickly and not go to sheriff's sale. Once the judge says this property is foreclosed, nobody's paying on it, it goes directly to the land bank. So the land bank can become a really quick vehicle to bring these tax delinquent vacant properties in, and then the land bank gets to make decisions about disposition. There's potential for abuse, and I've heard that around the state, but trust me, you'd much rather a land bank serve as kind of the referee or the traffic cop on vacant properties than HUD or Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. So that's one of the things that land bank can do. Bring in tax delinquent properties, and once you are working with council people and neighbor organizations, they should be able to pick up the phone as they do in Cuyahoga County. So we have 2 properties on this street. They've been tax delinquent for 2 years. They're empty, and we have a neighbor that wants to buy one, and we'd like to tear the other one down. Then find a way, and you can quickly then go to you're a charter form of government too, so it's your CFO, it's Kristen Scalise. You go to your CFO, you go to your prosecutor and say, we want to bring this through the process. Not only can you foreclose on those and bring them to the land bank, there's a section of law that we passed in 2005 where you can fast track the foreclosures of tax delinquent vacant properties. And I'll tell the council people here, it is an incredible tool. when you know that a property that's been a pain in the backside, really caused a problem, when you know you can quickly bring it in, you'll use the tool. So once you establish those pipelines, you're going to find you're going to have a lot of customers. I find vacant properties, besides destroying value, by the way, again, Akron more fortunate, Cleveland, our neighbors in Cleveland that just honestly are not coming back. I mean, it's just going to be a matter of tearing down the bad houses and eventually. The thing that shocked us about this study that you helped pay for, we thought we'd be able to prove for the feds. So we were able to prove demolitions this way, foreclosures that way. And we thought we'd easily prove that demolitions would add value to surrounding properties. Not true. There are some neighborhoods on the east side of Cleveland where things are so bad, taking down the bad properties on those streets is not going to add value. You know, if you're on Manor Avenue off of East 93rd, got 20 houses, 10 are vacant, taking down the 10 is not going to add value to the remaining 10. Not overnight. So I think things are going to be better, though, for you in Akron, just based on what I've seen with your housing stuff. So I'll talk about Chris Norman. So one of the things we've done as part of the work we do, information is power. And we're shocked as we go around the state how people just don't have information about their own housing stock. So I work with a young mayor of Lorraine. He's 27, he's older than he's 28. Chase Rittenheimer, great guy. I went to Chase and said, Chase, how many houses need to come down in the city of Lorraine? Oh, it's at least 1,000. So we got a grant from the Nord Foundation, and we've used technology and GIS. We got a great GIS team, and we've used mobile devices. And what we do is we load up all the information on every property in the community. It's all on a mobile device. It happens to actually be on an iPad. It's all downloaded, everything. Ownership, tax records, do they receive mail, utility information. I don't know how much they have in the Akron. You can talk about that maybe. And they step in front of a property, and there it is. It tells you where you are. They lift up the iPad. They know where they are. They take a photo. They do a quick condition report, and they move on. We did the entire city of Lorraine in about 4 or 5 weeks, 28,000 properties. And I kidded with the mayor. I said, Mayor, I got great news for you. You go out and tell people when you became mayor, there were 1,000 properties that needed to come down. And we've done the survey. Now there's only 300. The point is, the mayor was off by a little. 300 really bad properties in Lorraine. Lorraine, in spite of all the bad press and some really ugly commercial districts, the amazing thing about Lorraine, by the way, because I spent a lot of time there last summer, is unlike Cleveland, when a house goes vacant, it's stripped within a day or two, maybe 3, but it's stripped. Their houses have been vacant, Lorraine, for 15 years. Nobody had touched them. Now, there was mold on the inside, and there were other issues, but they hadn't taken off the aluminum siding, they hadn't broken in. Just a different ethos, right? They respect the property. So we're doing it. So we got a grant, did Lorraine. Now we've done a lot of communities. Oberlin, we've done Mount Pleasant, and we're about to do the entire city. But the neat thing is we got support, and through Chris Norman, the East Akron Neighborhood Development Corporation, we're doing the entire city of Akron. And sometime by early August, mid-August.
Earlier, we're at 70% now.
70% now. You're good. You're doing a great job. It's amazing when you see this, and they come back and they slice and dice the reports, and okay, we grade them A, B, C, D, F. How many vacant A's? How many vacant B's, C's? And you just get it, and it's a great planning tool, and you can use it going forward. You know, if you've got limited demolition dollars, where do you spend it first? And there's some tough questions to answer. Do you go to a neighborhood where there are 10 vacant houses on a street of 20? Do you go do the demolitions there first, or are you likely to go to a neighborhood where there are 20 houses and only one really bad house on a street, or 2 or 3? And my sense is you want to go to where there are 2 or 3, but then what do you do to the 10 folks who are on the street here where there are 10 vacant properties? And those are decisions you have to make jointly with the city and with neighborhood folks. So we'll do go to Akron, and it's a good tool. And I've talked too long, and I don't know if I should take questions. And, so Patrick's got big challenges, by the way. And I appreciate Akron did it. And there's been some money that's come to you even before you did it. But we're in the hunt for raising more money. And I think I'm serious about asking the county government, the city councilman in Akron, you should ask the county government to step up. They've got a wider economic base, a bigger taxing.
They should pay for our sewers, too.
Well, I'm not an expert in that area, but I will tell you that when it comes to vacant properties, it's in their best interest. So, questions? Should I take?
Yeah, let's take just a few clarifying questions, because I think it's important, just if you have questions related to the material that Jim just shared, that would be good to clarify before we ask Patrick to talk about our land bank. So any questions? Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure whether this is a question for Patrick or for you, Jen, but thank you, by the way, for being here.
Sure.
I've been surveilling a block in Akron where things got really bad. But recently I've seen that the last, not the last vacant house, but the last, what I would call derelict house has come down. Now there's a swath of what were probably 6 properties, and it's vacant.
Hopefully not being dumped then, right? Not yet.
Not yet. And I guess my question is, the properties as they were originally platted are too small to build on. What can a land bank do about reconfiguring property lines?
Well, you can do, there's not a lot of things. So when vacant land is made available in Cuyahoga County, I'd like to have this great scheme and plan about what they do with it. A lot of it just goes to the next door neighbor, right? So if you've been suffering for years with that vacant house, they'll take it down, and if there are neighbors on either side, sometimes they'll do a lot split and a lot consolidation to adjoining properties. Where you have neighbors, sometimes the easiest thing to do is simply approach a neighbor next door and say, would you like an extra lot or 2? And that's something you're going to be dealing with. Some land banks charge. It's funny, in Mansfield, they've got this notion of charging $99.95, like somehow it's a paint job at Earl Shine. And I said, well, just give it to them. But anyway, I'd recommend you just give it to the adjoining neighbors. And the land bank, Cuyahoga County pays for the legal work, the consolidation. However, if you've got multiple lots, then you have to be a little more creative about what you're doing. One of the things I didn't talk about yet is we're about to kick off a massive reforestation program up in Cleveland. The tree canopy in what was called the Forest City is gone. You know, it's development, it's years of lack of maintenance of the tree stock. And to that end, the land bank, the Western Reserve Land Conservancy, bought out of bankruptcy a 380-acre tree farm in Lake County. And boy, have I got trees for you, Patrick. Cheap. But anyway, so planting trees. I'm a huge believer in not only planting trees to improve the quality of life for people who live in the neighborhood, to keep water out of the storm sewer system, to improve the quality of air. And there's 100 studies that will tell you that where there are trees, value is added in any number of ways. So every solution is localized. In some cases, if it's a really tough street, and I'll get right to it, if it's a really tough street, you just might put together a bunch of property and do what a land bank does, which is bank it. And someday, I mean, look, there's about 30,000 vacant lots in Cleveland now. There'll be more, 5,000 acres, but not together, all splintered, right? So I'm a big believer that you should just, in every city, gather as much land as you can, because I believe someday it's going to have value again. You know, when global warming kicks in and we're like North Carolina and they're dying down there in the South, people will come back to where we still have. So every solution is individual. But plant trees. If you go to Patrick, he'll get them.
Gina?
Yeah, so with the idea of the reforesting, the canopy, great, fantastic. The material that exists in those properties are going to be demolished. I know that there's a company in Cleveland called A Piece of Cleveland, which is, you know, a great upcycling business where they go into the properties, they take out harvest the material, and then remanufacture it, make it into product. And we've explored that many times in Akron. To our dismay, we're not able to get into properties that are going to be demolished. And I'm wondering if companies like A Piece of Cleveland have a relationship with the land bank, and how would that work in Akron?
There's actually more than this. They get the most press, but there are about 3 companies now that have relationships with the land bank that they're allowed to go in and harvest valuable material for reuse. One is called Reclaim Cleveland. They're based out of the Lakewood area. There's one based out of the Near East Side. So they have a relationship with them. And there's also a company called Kurtz Brothers that recycles 90% of the house. Now, not in the way that Piece of Cleveland does, where they pull it out and you'll see a table at the Starbucks in Cleveland Heights saying, this came from the old standard school at East 55th and East 50th. You don't see that. But what they'll do is they hire people in the process. They'll bring it in, and the wood goes that way, the glass goes that way, the aluminum goes that way, and there's very little that goes to a landfill. So I think, and it's interesting, they call them MRFs, Mobile Recycling Facility, and they're trying to get a couple situated in Cleveland. So having a MRF up and running is great, but having a relationship with the city of Akron, because I know the city still does demolition, and or the land bank, I think makes sense, and you should continue to press your leaders, some of whom are here.
Yeah, but is it with,
From a policy perspective, like the deconstruction it's in our policies that we favor the deconstruction. We don't have any formal relationships yet, though I did meet with Habitat for Humanity here, who of course does deconstruction and would then put those items in their restore. The city of Akron also has a grant program that they work with and provide funds to Habitat to do the same thing. I also just had a phone call recently with the Cleveland Restoration Society, just exploring opportunities and networking and things that we can do in sort of that sustainability space. And in particular, even for the houses that we won't be demolishing, but we might be looking at for rehab. So, still kind of early.
But I would say that you mentioned something, Patrick, on the point of Habitat. Habitat doesn't build many new houses these days in Cleveland, but they recycle a lot of old ones. It's cheaper. And there's a great street over behind the Bridgewater Cafe on Kinsman where they've done 8 houses on one block. But eventually you're going to end up working with veterans groups. You're going to get houses where you're going to find donors willing to retrofit it for a disabled vet. Catholic Charities is involved in taking a lot of these distressed properties and using them for refugee families. I mean, there's any number. If you go to the Cuyahoga County Land Bank website, there are your opportunities. It's churches, it's veterans groups, it's Habitat for Humanity, it's rehab, it's not just demo. And part of my problem is I talk too much about demo. I gave a talk last week and somebody got up and said, "You're very nihilistic."
So we want to shift to Patrick, but one last question. Cleveland, of course, is a leader in urban agriculture in the country. And I'm just curious, how much work do you do with organizations and groups that are interested in assembling property, you know, in the acres, basically, for this purpose?
The land bank works, they're not so much yet into urban farming, but they've, I think, at least at the stage of community gardens. I mean, there are plenty of those. What's the one between an urban farm and a community garden?
Market scale.
Market, yeah. That too. You know, look, there's all the land you want in places like Cleveland. I mentioned there are parts of Akron where there's plenty of vacant land. One of the problems you have in Cleveland is the soil stinks, folks. It's bad soil.
Well, that's one of my questions. What, on the vacant lands in Cuyahoga County, what's the percentage that are actually contaminated or brownfield?
I wouldn't put them at the level of brownfield or contamination, but let me tell you, 120 years of industrial pollution, you're not going to be growing tomatoes anytime soon. And so you have a lot of people involved, including the folks at Riddall, which is an urban farm over on East 80th off of Kinsman. They're acolytes of Will Allen up in Milwaukee.
A lot of people in this room have been up there.
You know Will. Yeah. Okay, you know the work he's done. They're growing their own soil. Part of what I was with a group this morning, we're trying to get some funding to train people in the Mount Pleasant neighborhood to be directly involved in not only demolition, but into repurposing vacant lots in Mount Pleasant. So these firms come in from all over and they bid, and we're working on a program now where we will hire neighborhood residents through a job training program. If there's going to be demolition, it should be done by neighborhood residents. They'll have a sense of involvement with the process. They're also going to be involved in the repurposing of the property. And soil is a big part of it. As it turns out, Kurtz Brothers was there this morning because they have put together something called, and I can't give you the right name, but basically something like urban soil, and it's quality soil. They have a big recycling operation over in the valley near Rockside and Canal Road. So I'd like to tell you that the soil is ready to go. A lot of it is not.
What if you can repurpose it or renew that soil right on site? Okay.
Share it with me.
Let's talk.
Yeah.
Can you give us 30 seconds on commercial property, industrial property, how it affects the land bank? Because without that, you can do all you want with the homes.
It's a great question. Look, so commercial industrial properties, we have focused in on residential, but that's the, what's the phrase? It's the 800-pound elephant or gorilla in the corner. In cities like Cleveland, so we've met with folks in the governor's office and we've talked to federal folks. We've really focused in on the residential stuff. We have to deal with the reality of thousands of vacant industrial sites in Ohio. You've got them here, and the economic development folks in Cleveland will tell you, having 5,000 acres fragmented doesn't do much of them when they try to sell the city. And some of the most enticing sites are the old 20 and 30 acre sites where the cost of cleanup is going to be significant. So right now we focus on residential, but it's a challenge that Patrick will have to deal with, and you as a community will, kind of selectively going after sites that provide promise, because there's a guy about to do a project at 79th and Woodland. It's a combination of the, it's a fascinating project. It's got Ohio State in. They're going to grow the fish just like Will Allen. They're going to have the fish farming. They're repurposing some of the land out in what was a parking lot. They're doing the fly, the growing of the flies. I can't, I'm sorry.
Maggots.
Maggots, yeah, the maggots. And they've raised a lot of private dollars, and one of the big investors there is a guy named Russ Cantonese, and he has a big place called Cantonese Fish. And they view this as a great opportunity to expand their operation. So there are opportunities, but good question, big problem.
Can I have 2 minutes of your time when you're done here?
Sure. Mind if I check to see if my passport
We have
arrived?
the passport.
I got a tracking number. It's
So
online.
Jim, go and deal with that. But we also really want to thank you for making the trip down here. And my heart went flutter. My heart went flutter when you said 79th and Woodland, because I had my last office in the Orlando Baking Building right there at that intersection.
Well, it was owned by, I'll tell you the name of the factory in a minute. I'll tell you the name of the factory.
Yeah, that's cool. All right.
Now, this problem will all be solved by Patrick Bravo.
So, many of you might have met Patrick when he was working for the county as the Assistant Director for Community Development. Do I have that? Community and Economic Development. He's also an elected official on the school board. And I was actually in the meeting of the board of the land bank where they announced that Patrick was hired as the executive director. And so Patrick has been involved in our community in many ways over, how long were you working with the county?
I was with the county for 3 years.
Okay, great. I know Patrick is somebody who likes to get stuff done. I know in University Park, the neighborhood network there was able to identify, I think, 13 properties to take off of the tax lien sale this spring. Worked with Abraham Westcott, who was actually invited tonight. I never heard from him. We were hoping that he could be here as well. And our understanding is that those 13 properties were taken off the tax lien sale, hopefully, potentially candidates for the land bank. And those properties were actually identified by the neighborhood network as, prime properties to assemble for green infrastructure, community gardens, market scale gardens, and just green space for the neighborhood. So I've been connected to at least one effort to try to figure out how the mechanics of all this works. So that's what we're excited to hear about tonight. We know it's very new for you, but you've been involved for quite some time helping to organize it. So thank you for your leadership, and I look forward to hearing how to access the tool.
Oh, great, thank you. So my name is Patrick Bravo, and I'm the Executive Director of the Summit County Land Bank, which is, that's a recently new title for me. I officially switched over from county government to the land bank on May 26th, so we're still putting the train together, but we're rolling down the tracks. But the land bank was actually formed in 2012, so it might not be as new as it sounds, but it's new as far as being up and running on its own with an independent staff. As Jim had said earlier, when Cuyahoga County first created the land bank structure here in Ohio in 2009, it wasn't open to counties like Summit County. but shortly thereafter, about a year later it was, and Summit County actually began the process of determining whether or not it wanted a land bank. If it did, what would it look like, what would it need? And that process was about 2 years in 2012, when we decided to quickly finish our research and sort of get things done. Because as Jim had also mentioned, the Moving Ohio Forward demolition grant program through the Ohio Attorney General's office had come out, and we had about 45 days. Most people don't think government moves very quickly, but when there's a couple $1 million on the table, I think we filed the Articles of Incorporation, constituted a board, had our first meeting, approved our bylaws and everything else, and the grant application all in 45 days. So we moved pretty quickly for that. Just to give you a little bit more about the land bank, it's governed by a 7-member board of directors. So 3 of them are statutory permanent members. That is the Summit County Fiscal Officer, who also happens to serve as our chair. That's Kristen Scalise. The Summit County Executive, Russell M. Pry, and our council representative, Eileen Shapiro, who's the president of county council, and she also fills that council representative role for those 3 members. The next 2 members are a representative from the largest city in Summit County. That, of course, is Akron. The mayor makes that appointment, and he has appointed Marco Somerville, former Ward 3 city councilman and council president. And then Helen Humphreys is our township representative from the largest township. She's the president of the Summit County Township Trustees Association. They provide that appointment for us, or that recommendation, and their president serves as the township representative. Statutorily, we have 2 more members we've added. You can have 5, 7, or 9. We've gone with 7. Of the next 2, one of them has to have real estate experience. That's Jerry Feeman, who's also a Summit County Council person. And our last additional director then is Fred Wright from the Akron Urban League. So those 7 directors provide all of the policy guidance and leadership for the land bank. And then recently they just hired me to actually run the land bank and hire additional staff, which I have not done yet. So I'm doing the legal and the fiscal and the policy and the writing and the answering the phones and the emails and answering the door, and it's kind of crazy right now. And running 3 programs that we now have up and running. The funding we receive, Jim mentioned, is a portion of the delinquent taxes and assessments that are collected each year. So when we created the land bank, one of the options that we had was for county council to authorize that 5% of delinquent taxes and assessments that are collected each year should be set aside for the land bank to fund land bank operations. That's about $2 million a year. When we were doing all of this, setting up the land bank and determining how it would be funded, Summit County is nothing if not collaborative. So the first thing that we did was went out to the Mayor's Association and the larger individual cities. We went out to the township associations. We went out to the school boards and the School Boards Association. And we worked with all of them because 5%, $2 million, that's taxpayer money, and it's going to be withheld from the taxing districts, the largest portion of which, of course, goes to the schools. So we wanted to find out from them what they thought. And overwhelmingly, and I'm not sure how it was in Cuyahoga County, Jim, but overwhelmingly in Summit County, everyone was a resounding yes. If you can take this abandoned, vacant, blighted property, the taxes haven't been paid on it in 7, 8, 9, 10 years anyway. If you can take that, rehab it or demolish it as it were, put that property back to productive tax use and start bringing tax dollars back into the county coffers, it's well worth the investment. We provided them with all the information. Here's what you got last year. Here's what it would look like if 5% were withheld to fund the land bank. One thing that we did do to make up for that, at least here, was raise the delinquent interest rate to the maximum, the statutory maximum, in order to offset some of the money those communities would lose for funding the land bank. So anyway, too much time on funding. Just know it's there. They are your tax dollars. But interestingly, even though it's funded through public tax dollars, the Summit County Land Bank is a private, nonprofit, community improvement corporation. And it's operated, even though 5 of our 7 board members are elected officials in other capacities, they're not public officials by virtue of just being on the board of directors for the land bank. We are, however, open to sunshine law, so anything that we do is public record. Our meetings are open and public, so you're welcome to come to those. We do post notices in the county building and also on the county website, though I fully admit it's completely buried right now. If you want to look for us, go to the executives page, go to departments, and look under community and economic development. And on the community development tab, there's a land bank button. If you follow that button, you'll find the land bank page where you'll at least see our public notices. If there are any auditors in the room, I'm not going to say this, but I'm really behind on getting the minutes posted, but you will find the notices and the agenda. So, let me see, what else am I missing? So that's how we're funded. So the 3 programs right now. So Jim had mentioned that the Moving Ohio Forward Demolition Program, we're running 3. 2 of them are residential demolition programs, and I know that we talk a lot about demolition. Unfortunately, because I think we're so new and because that's the money that's available to us right now, that's what we're doing. But know that it's not the full extent of certainly what Cuyahoga is doing, and it will not be the full extent of what we're doing or what we will do. But unfortunately right now, that's the money that really has largely become available to us outside of operating funds, and that's where we're focusing. And there really is a need, even in Summit County. We're a legacy city. We still have a housing stock built for the factories, and we don't have that kind of population anymore. It's much like the schools that we have. We still have enough school buildings for 57,000 students, and we have 20. So we're kind of right-sizing right now and expanding as we go. The Moving Ohio Forward Demolition Program, we got $3.8 million. We had to match 3.2 of that. So a total of about $7 million from 2012 until this year has been and will be spent on residential, 1 to 4 unit residential demolition. Countywide, we've taken down about 850 abandoned, vacant, blighted properties since 2012 through now. By the end of the program, we're still estimating between 900 and 1,000. Our original estimate was 922. Lots of things go into that. With every residential demolition we do, we have to do an asbestos survey, asbestos abatement, and the range in price for that across the county is, in the suburbs, far suburbs, we're talking about $8,000 for demolition and asbestos. City of Akron, City of Barberton, we're talking about $18,000 average because we have a lot of asbestos, we have a lot of older homes, and all of that has to be treated and abated. So that's the Moving Ohio Forward Demolition Program. 24 out of 31 communities in Summit County are participating. We did kind of like the AG. We spread it like peanut butter. We said everybody gets this much. If you can come up with a match, we'll match that 100%. We gave some weighted funds based on number of foreclosures and abandoned, vacant, blighted properties, and 24 communities ended up participating. Akron is obviously the largest city. They've been a great partner in everything that we've done, and that's good because, as Jim said, it's kind of it's our core, so we need to keep that healthy. The OFA program, we call it the OFA program. It's the Neighborhood Initiative Program. It's through the Ohio Housing Finance Agency. Those are the Treasury funds that Jim had referenced. We applied. It was a competitive grant process. We applied for that in January, and we were awarded $2 million. We applied for the minimum, which was really at that time all we were allowed to apply for because our land bank was so new. We don't own any properties, and any money above the minimum, which was based on your population, you could only ask for $25,000 for every property you wanted to take down. You had to own that property already, and they would give you an additional $25,000. So we were limited. We didn't have any properties, so we got the base amount, which was $2 million. We were also forced to target that money. So we targeted it based on the data that we collected: Akron, Barberton, Springfield, and Lakemore. There are 12 target areas. 9 of those are in Akron, and then 1 each in Barberton, Springfield, and Lakemore. We call them target areas. OFA also refers to them as neighborhoods. We know them better as voting precincts because that was the easiest way that the data was there for us to collect and have uniform sizes for all of the neighborhoods across Summit County. So Barberton, Springfield, Lakemore, and Akron is where we're spending that $2 million. The communities have provided us with the properties, the addresses that they would like us to work with. So we're not a land bank that's going to go in and tell a community, regardless of where you're from, which properties we're going to take, which we're going to demolish, and what we're going to do with them. We reached out, and all of those communities participated, gave us information, gave us data, gave us addresses. And actually Monday, the 14th, we will file, it's a big day for us, our first 8 tax foreclosure cases.
How many, Patrick?
8.
8.
Next week, though, we'll be doing about 16 altogether. And then the next week we'll do some more, and the next week we'll do some more. For $2 million, the cap is $25,000 per property that they'll reimburse us. If you do the math, that's at least 80 properties. The averages I gave you earlier tell us that we won't use $25,000 on every property, so our target is actually 100. And so we'll probably file. Most of the properties we take right now will be through expedited tax foreclosures. Jim said we have a number of ways that we can acquire property. Tax foreclosure and the expedited tax foreclosure process, all of these will be expedited tax foreclosure process. The biggest distinction is that they will go through the Board of Revision, which is who you would go to if you were contesting the valuation on your property. So the Board of Revision becomes the judiciary, the judicial body, quasi-judicial body, sorry. Sorry. I got two of my law professors here, they put me where I am, making me really nervous. So they will be the ones to hear the tax foreclosure cases, and so that'll be interesting. It's a first for us. We're having last-minute fire drill meetings today, trying to make sure we have everything in place for that. So it'll be really interesting. I don't want to drone on too long, but you wanted to know sort of the mechanics. How we're funded, what we're doing. Those are the programs we have. Let me mention one more thing. So the $2 million a year we get, obviously not all of that went towards these grant programs. So you might wonder, what are you doing with the money that you're collecting in the meantime? And some of the communities were wondering, and we were wondering, what are we going to do? Because we didn't want to hold up and sort of stockpile, this cash. So we also created the Summit County Land Bank Discretionary Grant Fund Program. I have not posted it yet, so you will be able to find soon the application and guidelines for that grant. It is open to communities, meaning political subdivisions, and nonprofit agencies. There is a pre-qualification process for nonprofits. We're stealing mostly from Cuyahoga, thank you very much, and Lucas County. But there is a pre-qualification process for that. But that money is geared towards to allow the communities to do projects that they've been sitting on, that they haven't been able to get funding for, that we can't do right now because we don't have any programming in place. So other than the grant programs, we don't have the Veterans Housing Program or the other rehab programs or anything like that. Until we do, we've set a pot of money aside as a discretionary grant fund to allow nonprofits and political subdivisions to make use of it.
Great. Thanks, Patrick. Let's take questions. Let's take questions for Patrick before we ask Jim perhaps to get up and we can, yes.
How delinquent do you have to be to have the trigger pulled?
Certified delinquent, meaning, so when they certified the delinquencies in August, technically that's it. In reality, if we can avoid, and the question was how tax delinquent do you have to be? Not just delinquent, not late, certified tax delinquent. You haven't paid the first half, the second half, you haven't paid when they do the courtesy billing in August and then they certify later. And the law is actually changing too. Right now it's a year, but that's actually shortening to 60 days after the certification, and we can actually go in and file a tax foreclosure. The reality is, you remember who I told you was on the board, so they are nothing if politically sensitive. So we're not going after the person who didn't pay their property taxes in 2013, unless the community has said to us, and this is reality for the 94 properties right now that we're working on preparing the foreclosure complaints for. There are a few 2013 certified tax delinquent years in there, but they are properties that the community has said, it's abandoned, it's vacant, it's been abandoned, it's been vacant. Each of the properties that gets referred to us, we actually do a lot of in-house research on, and then I have physically gone out to the field, I've walked around the house, I've taken 30 or 40 pictures, I've inspected it. As per the Ohio Revised Code, I've looked for the things that they've said. All the properties that we would take as part of a tax foreclosure also must be abandoned and vacant. So they cannot be occupied. So we're not displacing anyone either.
And how is the survey that Chris is doing going to play into this?
It's going to provide a lot of data for us, I think. And we've actually talked to Thriving Communities Institute, to the Knight Foundation, to EANDC, to the City of Akron about expanding the scope of that project beyond the borders of Akron. I don't know what that's going to look like yet. I don't know if we're going to be able to do it. I don't know how much it'll cost. I know that there's been a discussion that broadening it to the entire county might be a little cost prohibitive at first. Maybe we want to target the communities that we would conduct that survey in. But they're going to provide a lot of useful data for us. More for them than for us. It'll help give us a picture of what our core city looks like. But as they work on, as the city works on its sort of strategic plan, they'll be a little bit more selective about the properties that they refer to us, I think. You know, right now it's kind of a wholesale demolition. That doesn't mean that there's not strategy. The city is certainly focusing on particular areas, and I can't speak for the city, but I know that they are. But I think the data that EANDC and their team is collecting in partnership with Thriving Communities will help them better focus their plans. So.
Yeah. We have a question.
Yeah, you've said that by necessity the land bank is focusing on demolition, but what are the other options? What's the next step? Are there land banks that actually focus on doing something with properties or refurbishing houses, or
Yes.
what else is there?
Yes, all of it. I mean, the sky's really the limit. We've seen veterans housing programs, we've seen rehab programs, we've seen some of those programs combined. So they will provide the home and some of the funding to do the rehab, and then you'll do the rehab and buy the home and get sort of credits towards all of that at the same time. We've seen a number of programs, and not just with the homes. There's the community gardens, the pocket parks, the Jim could probably rattle off a lot more than me. But there are a lot of programs out there other than demolition. The problem is they take a little planning, they take a little staff, they take, even someone to do simple things like create the applications. And we just don't have that yet. We're quickly getting there, but it'll be a little bit of time.
And I just want to reiterate something that Jim talked about, the Mount Pleasant neighborhood, which is on the east side of Cleveland. Were you here when he was talking about the meeting I think you just had today in Mount Pleasant? They're talking about creating a project that's focused that will actually hire neighborhood residents to do some of the rehab. And I don't know if it's some of the demolition as well, but actually engaging neighborhood residents in some of these activities, rehab properties, and I think lead the charge on the reuse strategies generally. So that was encouraging for me to hear that.
And some of the land banks do have even commercial programs. I mean, Lucas County has done a couple of commercial properties. So some of the land banks have started to move beyond that, and they will rehab homes and sell them. In many instances, they'll work with local realtors. They'll post them on their website. They will do homes that someone needs to take, but they're still good homes. I mean, we do run across those. We ran across a few while we were out doing our surveys where we kind of looked at the home, and we don't know necessarily always what's going on the inside where the house has been stripped, and a lot of ours have. We're a little more like Cleveland, a little less like Lorraine. Most of the houses I've gone to, as high up as you can reach, that's where the siding has been stripped. The pipes are gone, the basement windows are busted out, and the water heaters have walked away, and all the pipes are gone. We don't always know what's going on inside, but we have come across homes where we've gone back to the community and said, hey, we went and inspected this house, we looked at it. Are you sure you want this demolished? Because it looks like a good home. If you're not sure you want it demolished, hold on to it. We'll work with you when we get to the point of rehab. So, and the rehab programs I've seen are quite numerous in the way that they work. So.
Other questions? Yes.
Yeah, over the last year, I've seen Cleveland's website, quite a few, Ohio County's website quite a few times, and it is how the gentleman was saying it's laid out quite well. Right now, with the current setup, which is it's new, and I understand there's really not that flow yet. So what can we expect, going forward if we want to check out properties that are available? Because right now you got to rely on email being sent, which is cool, but if it were right there, it'd be much easier to plan and to move forward with. So what can we expect?
Well, the easy thing right now just to know is that we don't own any, so there are none available.
Okay.
When we get to the point that we do, we'll have a website, not a web page. So I still work in the county building, though they kicked me out of my office. I'm still in the county building. We are located at 175 South Main Street, right downtown. Eventually, we will move out to the Firestone property that the county is taking a portion of on South Main Street. That's supposed to be sometime next year. But the county, we still have a contract with the county to provide a lot of the back office services. So from 2012 until now, I was serving as the Deputy Director for Community and Economic Development, and one of my projects was the Summit County Land Bank. So we provided all of the finance support, the financial support, the accounting, just anything administrative, operational, and we were running the Moving Ohio Forward demolition program. As we transitioned out onto our own, we have slowly moved several of those pieces away. We now have our own bank accounts, we now have our own accounting firm, so we're getting all of those things. The website, unfortunately, is one of those things that'll probably be a little more towards last. So we're still on the county's website, hence it's a page and there's not a lot of functionality. Right. I think you can expect something more along the lines of Cuyahoga County, but it's just not there yet. Someone also asked about vacant lots earlier, and keep in mind, the Moving Ohio Forward program where we spent, that was the largest program you've seen to date, and just about any property that you see being taken down right now is likely funded through the land bank, through the Moving Ohio Forward program. Those properties were demolished either through condemnation or waiver. So in many instances, and most of them were condemnation, in many instances, either the city of Akron condemned a property and went in and demolished it, or they went to a homeowner, maybe someone inherited a parent's property that passed away and they don't want it anymore, whatever the case may be, and that person said, sure, I'll sign a waiver.
So somebody still owns them?
So the people that those houses were torn down, many of them still own those homes. So we can't combine them, we can't do anything with them, we can't give them away yet or sell them, or neither can the city of Akron. So in many instances, that's why you might see, well, here's 6 vacant lots. The houses have been demolished, but nobody's done anything with them. That might be why.
So are those then are people paying taxes on the lot?
Probably not.
So
Which makes
later,
them ripe for the land bank at some point. Unfortunately, with Moving Ohio Forward and the OFA program, those are residential demolition programs. With OFA, we have to actually own the property, which is another reason why the land bank got kicked out on its own, because it was becoming too much for the county to run inside its office. I wasn't there directing anything anymore. So, but that's where the focus is. So we have to take those properties first. The properties that you're talking about that, yes, probably no one's paying the taxes on them, we'll look at those next.
So Patrick, I have a question based upon a recommendation that Joe made to our community. I mean, you've been working in county government for a number of years. Your board members, in fact, Eileen Shapiro is on your board. She's the president of City Council. What I heard Jim recommend is that we approach City Council to ask them to consider a bond issue, $10 million.
You mean city or
county? I'm sorry, county. That's what I'm sorry. Yeah, not city. I meant county. And I know there are similar issues being considered, currently for large projects. What's your sense of, how realistic that might be? And frankly, taking your hat off as a county employee and now land bank and director, does that make sense to you?
It absolutely makes sense, but when Jim, is it Jim's?
Well, I was looking for
Jim is going to be the one to go to
within
county council and
earshot.
ask for a $10 million bond issue, because I'm not right now, but who wouldn't like more revenue? The truth is, and I don't know that you'll find ever an executive director that would say this, and I probably won't say it like a year from now, but I don't know if I can handle $10 million right now. I'm trying to handle the $7 million that I have and the $2 million that's coming in and the $2 million grant. And it would be great. I think we need to first focus on the money that's available now that has a specific purpose, utilize it, do what we can with it, maximize it where we can with the opportunities that we have, and in the meantime build a plan with our partners, with the AMATs and the EANDCs and the City of Akrons and the Barbertons and the Cuyahoga Falls. Work with our partners to build a plan to find out how they would like us to do it. And in the meantime, we still need a realistic snapshot of what the county looks like. I know that we did a survey, we did essentially a survey in 2011, 2012, and we got about 25 communities out of 31 to give us data. Some of them actually went and drove every street, and we had about 26,000 problem properties, meaning they were tax foreclosures, mortgage foreclosures, they were abandoned, vacant, blighted in some way. About 5,000 of those countywide were abandoned, vacant, blighted. That was their primary designation. In some way they were abandoned, vacant, blighted. So we guess that that's what our problem is, but that was also 2-3 years ago. We've taken down almost 1,000 homes. We don't know what the county looks like. So I think before we would do that, we really need a snapshot.
Got it. Any other questions? Somebody who has not asked a question yet.
Tiny little question.
Yeah.
So currently you're focusing solely on residential properties, not doing anything with commercial properties?
Right. The 3.8 and the two grants, they're both
Right.
1 to 4 unit residential, so we can do small. Now, the caveat to that is, in a building like this, not that we would necessarily do it, for the one grant, if we could have proved that sometime within the last 50 years there were apartments above here, we could use funds for that.
Okay.
OFA as well, we can do that to an extent. The problem is, they cost a lot more. And if we're only giving X amount of dollars to the city of Barberton or to the city of Cuyahoga, whoever it is, because that's all we have, they can tear down one of these or 10 of those residential units. So the impact sometimes and the cost.
Cool. Thank you.
Roberta, do you have one last question?
Well, this is actually a question for Chris Norman. You're 75% done with your survey? You said?
70.
And would you calculate 70%? And what percentage of that, of those that you surveyed, would you say would be candidates for demolition?
Well, I can't say. Only because we are done, A, but B, the city is going to ultimately decide, what criteria to use. We're grading each parcel. It's about just shy around 98,000 parcels in the city. And so we're talking about the residential, the industrial, and the business. The commercial parcels are all being documented. And staying from the sidewalk, our surveyors are taking a snapshot of each parcel, and they grade the parcel, so A through F. Most of our residents are in the A, B range, but we've got pockets of some harder hit areas, but in all the neighborhoods we've got issues. We started in East Akron, We've done Kenmore, Ellet, and then up at Goodyear Heights, and we're currently in North Hill. We've also done we called Central, which is sort of the UPA, the former UPA, or whatever, that downtown footprint. So that's taken us to a little bit of the West Hill. But we're expecting to have our data collection done end of the month. I mean, it just depends on how the weather is. Maybe the first week of August. But the information we're collecting is really being processed by the Land Conservancy. They're sharing that with the city. In the criteria, our surveyors indicate whether the house is vacant, whether it's an open vacancy. In other words, there are windows or doors on the first floor into the main structure that have not been secured. And so the county goes out within the week, 2 weeks. You know, they're cross-referencing our lists immediately to make sure that at least those homes have been secured. But what properties become targets for demolition? What would be suitable for rehab? I think that's going to take a little more investigation, but this survey should give a pattern. You know, where should we focus some of the next step on investigation? And you know, for the CDC, we're the local contact. You know, East Akron neighborhood, we're the local contact. So we have 12 surveyors that were given to us by the city, and the Land Conservancy helped to train them, but we're just doing the logistics right now. So.
Okay, any other burning questions before we close out and have announcements for upcoming events? So, Patrick, we wish you well. And really the power of games is that we're a true network. And I'm speaking to you, Patrick, that the people who are in this room tonight, Patrick, people that are in this room tonight and others that are connected to the network have, you know, dozens of different gifts, perspectives, networks of relationships, access to resources that will be of service to you, I'm sure.
Yeah. Can you, and please feel free, that slide presentation which I created hastily in like 10 minutes in my office today, at the very end of it is my contact information, which you already have. If you want to put it up after we're finished, you can cycle through that.
Absolutely.
But you're free to share my email with anybody.
Okay, great. So we encourage, if there's, you know, something that really sparked your interest, you think that you might be able to play some kind of role in advancing this effort, please see Patrick tonight. Definitely get his contact information. You know, we want to work together to make it happen. And I don't know where Jim is at. He's trying to...
the building. I have a couple comments for Jim.
Okay.
Well, with an attitude of gratitude, with all the fervent prayers of righteous individuals in the room, we know that these prayers are answered. And that when we get reception of blessings and gifts, what do we want to say? I want to say thank you, right? Thank you.
Yes.
So Jim has departed on his way to Greece with his daughter because the delivery had been made. See, these little things mean a lot, and they're incremental elements of really the advancement of we can do. We're can-do gurus in this place. We get a bunch of people together with the right ideas and the right energy, and we lift up these ideas, and these good ideas are answered and received. So I just want to continue to encourage each and every one of you and you and you right there in TV land to show up and come to the Gaines meetings. So I want to thank my friend Sue and Jim and my friend Pat with all your good ideas. Thanks for coming tonight, and we're going to open it up for creative dialogue and ongoing positive energy that can take this city forward.
Tell us about a grazing opportunity.
We wanted to announce an event that's going on this weekend, and it's in the West Hill neighborhood. That is the neighborhood that's wedged between downtown and Highland Square. So sometimes it doesn't get as much attention as it should. There is an area right by the Glendale Cemetery, and it's called the Glendale Steps. And if many of you have driven on Glendale Avenue between Locust and Rand, you'll probably look up at the hillside and see a potentially great historic site that has been in a lot of neglect. It's overgrown. It's what it is. It used to be a WPA site that has 262 stairs. It has gardens all around it. The city has actually forested land on both sides. So there's a lot of potential there for really exciting things to happen. And there's a group of gardeners, Nate, we'll point him out, Karen, Star, and even Tony, who has donated one of the garden sites in the neighborhood. We have 3 sites going in the community gardening. We also have some Nepalese that are taking on a lot of plots. So we have the new Asian immigrants participating as well. But we have expanded these 3 lots, and we're working our way down the hillside to also bring gardens, demonstration gardens, to show that we can bring a food forest environment to the urban center of Akron. So that's our ultimate goal, is a food forest. That is plantings where people can actually go and eat local food. We're going to have berry bushes where there's a lot of orchard trees, vineyards. We did run into one problem though, being that it's a very steep slope. We started on one area that was not very steep, and it took about 15 volunteers, maybe about 4 or 5 weekends, to clear this one site, to plant it. So we've got a butterfly garden there. But we're going up to the next level, about 100 by 300 feet, and it's so overgrown with brambles and poison ivy and daylilies that we just kind of threw up our hands and we said, oh, how are we going to possibly do anything with it? So I actually ran into somebody who's head of the 4-H club of Summit County, and she said, goats. Why not get goats in there and they'll clear it out for you? They love noxious weeds. They love poison ivy. And then I also recalled that Google, at their headquarters, used goats. So what we're doing is we're going to be trying an experiment, and we know it's going to work. So it's already tried and true in a lot of different areas. We're going to bring in some goats. These are called dwarf Nigerian goats. And we're also going to have a couple alpacas as well that are going to work with us to clear this hillside right by Glendale Cemetery. At first we were going to kind of fly under the radar and try to sneak in these animals, get them in and out. But Rich, thanks to you, Rick Swirsky, the Ward 1 council person, said, oh no, don't do that. Trust the city, trust them. They'll step up for you. And he was absolutely right. We've actually had about 3 or 4 meetings with the city, all different departments. They're all stepping up. They're supporting us in a huge way. They've bush hogged a lot of the growth. The highway department has actually done a little stonework for us. They're closing the road. They're giving us signs, all kinds of support. So we're just very thankful to them that they actually had, the foresight, to say, hey, this is a great PR program for you. And then we did hear that goats and alpacas need a little stimulation, to really get them moving, to get them chomping on these noxious weeds and bushes. So we've had all these people call us that have heard about this project and said, we want to help you out. We want to get these goats stimulated. So we've got all kinds of musicians lined up, even on bagpipes. We have hula hoopers. We actually have a jam that's going on, a musical jam that'll be going on. And we even have for a kids area, we have a recycled train that's going to be running made out of rain barrels. So we're going to have a lot of excitement this weekend, and we hope you can join us. And Rich, I don't know if I missed anything. I think Rich is also taking appointments. He's having his own tent there.
I'm having office hours.
Right, holding office hours right on site.
Will Rich be in the dunking machine?
Who said that? Me?
If we can get one donated, if anyone knows where we can find one, I think that would be great.
So it's from what time to what time?
Oh yeah, it's going, and then Karen, you're going to be also part of the music jamboree, right? So, we're going to actually, it's going to be Saturday and Sunday, 11 to 4, are kind of the prime entertainment hours. If you have kids, we have a kids station right up on the terrace. We'll be doing nature crafts, Countryside Conservancy, and another arts organization will be there conducting nature crafts and all kinds of projects for the kids. So the whole idea is that we'll show the community, a really good example of sustainability, earth-friendly practices, and we'll really get this area of the city that's been neglected, we'll really get a great jump start on getting that going as a park for everybody to enjoy. So it's also eventually going to be connected to the towpath as well because of the location.
Woo! A quick word. This is a great example of being completely creative, having fun, and doing what it's all about, which is why we're gathered here to advance sustainable practices, and you're educating people too,
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, we'll be having 8 tents, and we'll have a lot of different sustainability, kind of earth-friendly gardening activities going on. So yeah, a lot of education as well as entertainment.
Great job. 11 to 4, no,
11 to 4, Saturday and Sunday.
And what's the address?
The address is like 33 to 99 Glendale Avenue, but it's between Locust Street and Rand Street. So it's right around the corner if you know where Glendale Cemetery is.
If you take Rand off of Market.
Right off of, yeah. And we're right off of Maple Street.
Okay.
Can't miss it.
Cool.
And I just want to put in one plea. We're still looking for night shepherds for the goats. We have some 4-hour shifts where we need people to make sure the goats don't jump over the fence, as well as all the 4-H kids are going to be in trailers. So we just want to make sure that they keep their curfew and they behave. So if anybody wants to do a 4-hour shift overnight, talk to me. We still have openings.
Woo! All right. Now, I'm just going to mention another event that's coming up on Tuesday, July 15th, which kind of relates to this. It's about creativity. At the Akron Art Museum from, now I forget what time, I think it's 5 to 7. There will be right in the auditorium at the Art Museum a conversation about art and entrepreneurship and how creativity is the source of innovation. And it's going to be a really fascinating conversation with business leaders, a leader from NeoMed, and really talking about how art of every shape and form can be inspiration for innovation, excellence, and productivity. So, I really applaud your team for creating this really awesome event. So the Art Museum this Tuesday the 15th from 5 to 7 is another opportunity to have a conversation about how to spur creativity and innovation by embracing the arts. Do you have anything for us tonight, Russ? We really appreciate you being here.
No, thank you. This is, Rich and I have some ideas to take back to our colleagues on council. This is good.
Cool. Well, we appreciate.
I just want to make sure everybody knows that the Akronist pretty much records all of our sessions. They're very handy. They are a community resource. They're our partners with this organization to get the word out about sustainability. They have recorded this one. It will be posted on the Akronist. So in that interim space where you don't have a website to go yet with the land bank, and you're trying to explain this to people, please utilize the resource of the Akronist. This is our objective, is to get this information out, advance our sustainability objectives, and we're all doing it. So thank you very much to the Akronist.
Thank you.
And we're located on the first floor of the main library. In case you don't know, we're located on the first floor of the main library.
Cool. Yeah. Any other parting comments before you hang out for a while? And Jason?
Thanks, Sue. One announcement. A lot of you were at our AMAT Switching Gears bike event a couple weeks ago. So Jason Roberts, if you saw him, he's from a group called the Better Block in Dallas. And his whole ethos, I guess you would say, is transforming the city one block at a time, building relationships between people. He started out doing things like making street furniture out of pallets and doing a beer garden or a makeshift barbecue on the street, painting temporary bike lanes. They would do things like they would bring in 50 trees from a nursery, build street furniture, do an art show, and people could see this blighted block starting to come back to life, even if it was just for 24 hours. And the idea was you could see it, you could touch it, you could conceptualize what it would look like in a way. I'm a planner by trade. I'm the first to critique our profession. We love to talk. We love to make long-term plans, and then we love to say, well, there's no money for this and there's too much bureaucracy. And I think what Jason got is frustrated by that and decided, you know what, damn it, I'm going to go out and change my neighborhood. He got so successful, he wrote a grant to the federal government to get $43 million for a streetcar in Dallas, which that doesn't usually happen. And he started off with this grassroots effort. So I say all that to say, I think the Knight Foundation is going to bring him back in August for a whole week. He really loved Akron. He wants to do something here. I think any of you guys that are interested in participating, he's looking for, volunteers and help. I'm not sure how it's all going to go down yet, because I think part of it will be to identify possible locations. Part of it will be if we want to build something, what do we want to do, in which location, who has lumber, who has plants, whatever it would be. I think it'll be to work out all those sorts of details. But I mean, as you all know, this city is full of areas, especially old commercial areas, that we could try to jumpstart. Astor Avenue and Firestone Park, Kenmore Boulevard, Copley Road, Storer Avenue. All these little old commercial areas. And I think it really fits in with what Jim said, because I blogged about the vacancy and abandonment problem in Akron and Northeast Ohio last night. Jim coming here made me think about that issue. Jim's right that we're pretty lucky in Akron. We don't have nearly the problem they do in Cleveland yet. But when I look at the way the city's evolved, we lost 6,000 people in the 90s. We lost 18,000 in the last decade, which I think was kind of a wake-up call. I think some of that is we don't have enough housing people want, and we have too much that people don't want. So we have to figure out some way to change that, because I don't want to see the city lose another 90,000 people like we already have. And I don't think we have to, but I think it's the kind of work that Jason does in collaboration with the public sector, the private sector, nonprofits, where we can kind of get this top-down and bottom-up approach working together. Because I think Akron has really good bones. I think we can bring our neighborhoods back, but I hate to see us maybe not be as aware of the vacancy problem, because I think it's going to creep up on us. We tripled in population between 1910 and 1920. That means most of the city turns 100 this decade. And I think we're going to increasingly see problems with abandonment if we don't figure out a way to build new houses. Sorry to take up so much time.
No, so Jason, what is the other Jason's last name again?
Roberts.
Jason Roberts.
And it's, I think, thebetterblock.org. If that doesn't look like the right website, it's betterblock.org. And if anybody is interested in working with him, like I said, I don't know all the details yet, but Sue, if you're willing to give my email or contact info, I can kind of help serve as a middleman, I guess you would say, for when he comes. So.
We should put that out, and maybe the website, and if you think he might be back in August, we want to give people the heads up to keep an eye out and be in touch with you.
Yeah, I think the Knight Foundation is going to bring them back. And they just got a new program director in Akron, Josh McManus, and I think they're really excited about doing placemaking and community development, especially in the neighborhoods, because I think they realize in Akron there's been a lot of good work done downtown, but I think they're more interested in branching out, to neighborhoods all throughout the city. So.
Absolutely. Great. So, I don't know how long we can hang out. I assume anybody can buy a drink for a period of time, hang out, connect with who you're interested in talking with, and that's what Gaines is all about. Next month, we'll be focused on local food. Sarah Bradenberg will be one of our speakers who heads up Neighbor Food, which is a community gardening effort here in Cuyahoga County. She's also Akron, I'm sorry.
Actually, Summit County, we actually have.
Well, that's what I
It's
thought.
not in the city.
In Cuyahoga Falls, right?
No, in Green.
Cool. You're also the president of Master Gardeners this year and involved with the Summit Food Policy Coalition and Growing Hope. So we'll have other speakers as well. So we hope that you'll join us that evening as well, right here or maybe downstairs in Musica.
Most likely downstairs.
Most likely downstairs. All right. Have a good one.